Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, September the 5th, 2023. Today I want to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is a member of the US House of Representatives and she is considered to be pretty right-wing. And she has been in the news recently because she has said that she is not going to vote for the funding of the federal government unless an inquiry starts into the impeachment of Joe Biden. This is a reminder that there is a group of Republicans who are determined to impeach the president. You know, I think they've almost been trying to impeach him since before he became president. And yeah, so she's part of this group, and obviously causing a lot of outrage. And she is a Gemini, born on May the 27th, 1974. And I would have said she's quite a typical Gemini. And I want to look at her horoscope today and at least demonstrate that she really is a typical Gemini. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Tuesday, September the 5th, 2023. So the moon is still in Taurus, at least it's in Taurus at noon today in a chart set for New York. There's the moon, 2745 Taurus. So this moon will change sign depending where you are. So if you're in London, the moon moves from Taurus to Gemini at 7 minutes past 9 in the evening. So right at the end of the day, you might experience this change as the moon moves into Gemini. If you're in Paris, it's going to be even later, just after 10 o'clock in the evening. If you're in Asia, Australia, New Zealand, the moon goes into Gemini tomorrow. So moon entering Gemini needn't bother you. If you're in the Americas, the moon goes into Gemini at 7 minutes past 4 in the afternoon. If you're in at New York, 7 minutes past 4 in the afternoon. If you're in Los Angeles, the moon goes into Gemini at 7 minutes past 1 in the afternoon, which is sort of around lunchtime. So on the West Coast, you get almost half a day having the moon in Gemini. So yeah, so if you are in the Americas and you experience this change, it is quite a big change because the moon, in Taurus is quite fixed, quite set in its ways. And then when it moves into Gemini, all of a sudden, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of talking, there's ideas, changes of plan. Things become, less stable. People start to see alternative points of view. There's sort of argument, discussion, that kind of thing. And in general, I think the day becomes a bit lighter when the moon moves into Gemini. As far as other things going on today, well, the sun is making a semi-sextile aspect to Venus. So you can see that the sun is at 1250 Virgo, Venus is at 1215 Leo. You can see they're pretty much one sign apart, the sun and Venus. And I do regard the semi-sextile aspect as being, all things being equal, a bad aspect, or certainly a challenging aspect, because when you've got two planets one sign apart, they are working in different ways. So Sun in Virgo is very much focused on detail, on the material realities, making sure everything is properly sorted out. Venus in Leo, by contrast, is about ego. It's about ourselves. You know, if we are into ourselves and we're interested in pushing ourselves, and we want to tell the world how brilliant we are, we don't really want to get bogged down in detail. So if we are really keen on telling everyone how brilliant we are, we might find we get some criticism, which may not be such a bad thing, but, you know, a detail like, oh yeah, you think you're so brilliant, but you did this wrong, and you did that wrong, and you did that wrong, and are you really sure you're that brilliant? So that semi-sextile represents a sort of an argument there, and it may actually be an internal argument. You know, we might be quite proud of our achievements, thinking about what we've done right, and then this little voice will be telling us, are you so sure? Maybe not. Think about this, think about that. And that might undermine our confidence. So some of us may find that our confidence is undermined. It might be by other people. It might be by us ourselves. And, you know, it's a situation where there are no rights or wrongs. I mean, it's good to be confident. It's good to have a high opinion of ourselves within reason. But it's also good to be self-critical. It's also good to get constructive criticism. So we've kind of got to balance the two, and not sort of get annoyed. You know, not get annoyed if we see someone singing their own praises. Not getting annoyed if we find that we're being criticized for no reason at all. We've got to try to look at the other side of the coin and to take a balanced view. Now, while all this is going on, Mercury is aspecting the Mars-Uranus midpoint. So, you know, Mars-Uranus is quite a violent combination, and Mercury is a planet of communication. And so the language we hear might be unnecessarily violent, might be unnecessarily provocative. At least that's how it might come over to us. But it's important not to just overreact. You know, people like to talk. And people perhaps like to talk using strong, provocative language, even using violent imagery. But it is just Mercury. Mercury usually isn't able to put theory into practice. It's just communication. It's just words. So don't take it to heart. Mercury is also the thinking process. It's the way we are thinking. And so maybe some of us with Mercury on a Mars-Uranus might have some sort of strange thoughts about violence, the use of sort of weaponry and that kind of thing. I don't know, how do you get that out of your system? Maybe just go and watch a war film. That's what war films are for, aren't they? I mean, because, you know, violent cinema, it's there because, you know, we ourselves cannot go out and perpetrate violence, so we can watch actors doing it. So maybe that's a good way of dealing with Mercury aspecting the Mars-Uranus midpoint. So let me now move to my forecasts for the 12 signs. So here we go. Here are my star sign forecasts for Tuesday, September the 5th, 2023. Aries. You can see that quite a few things are not going to plan, and you might feel that disaster is just round the corner. While it is true that there is still work to be done, particularly on the financial front, it's important not to overreact. Through simple steps, you can stabilize the situation, and at least one person will give you the support you need. Taurus. You're trying your hardest to make an impact, but maybe you've already done enough. The people that matter know who you are, and the current phase is largely finished. As far as relationships are concerned, there may be an area of incompatibility, perhaps connected with pride and egos. And this area of incompatibility needs to be sorted out. The sooner the better. Gemini. It kind of depends where you are. If you're in Europe, Asia or Australasia, it may be difficult to get things done. And even if there are dramas, it might all come to nothing. But in the Americas, the day gets more interesting as it progresses, and by the late afternoon you start seeing new possibilities for creative actions. But all Geminis, wherever they are, must avoid violent language. Cancer. There appears to be some excitement, but when you analyse the situation, you realise that it's much ado about nothing. And that's a good thing. When the environment is neutral, even a bit boring, you can make better use of your time. And today's big contradiction is that the more people you have around you, the less variety you experience. Leo. You're able to cause a stir and get people to sit up and listen. But what are you going to say? And if you don't have a clear message, it could all be a waste of time. But if you understand what is going on and you have inner clarity and you want to make a definite point, then there's little doubt that you can hit the bullseye. Virgo. You seem to be in a bit of a hurry, and you may feel that you're fighting against a deadline, or perhaps you feel that there are people out there who you need to battle with. But you shouldn't underestimate yourself. You can probably get everything done without getting involved in a confrontation. This evening, your ambitions are burning bright. Libra. Yes, Venus is now going direct, but it is still going very slowly, and it will therefore take time for you to warm up to a new reality. And in the process, you'll become aware of a new challenge that requires you to accommodate something rather than to oppose it. But don't worry, you'll soon get the hang of it. Scorpio. There are different people around you, and you might feel that you know them very well. But even then, there are depths of knowledge that you haven't reached, that you might never reach, and you perhaps have to decide how far you want to go, because things could get complicated very quickly. Sagittarius. In general, the day becomes more interesting as it progresses, so don't give up at the first hurdle, and if you don't like things the way they are, consider the possibility that you can bring about constructive change. Yet some people are heading for trouble, and you might want to gently restrain their more dangerous impulses. Capricorn. There are a lot of suggestions flying around. Do this, don't do that, etc. But suggestions can bring you to a standstill, particularly if different people are suggesting different things. So it's important to make your own decisions and not allow yourself to be gaslit by rogue suggestions about your memories and opinions. Aquarius. Many Aquarians have felt constrained by circumstances beyond their control, or perhaps by obligations that they never really asked for. However, the situation is changing, and over the course of the day, you'll find it increasingly easy to break free from the shackles of the past. But at some stage, you do have to make a decision. Pisces. You want to do this, you want to do that, but fundamentally you're not sure, and uncertainty can be a recipe for time wasting. Fortunately, there comes a stage when you settle down, when you start distinguishing between the things that are important and the things that are meaningless. At some stage, family members need to be listened to. So, I'm now going to move to the I Ching. So, as always, I threw 3 coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? So, the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 57, which is the gentle. The gentle is about the wind. It's about a wind moving through everything and trying to get to the heart of things. And it can often be about searching for a bad influence, something that is evil, something that is destructive, but something that is lurking. And sort of the wind goes through everything trying to seek this thing out. So, if we felt that, our life is perhaps not as amazing as it should be, or we've got some little problem that needs to be sorted out, then now's the time to uncover it. Don't think that whatever this bad influence is, don't think it might not be somewhere. It could be anywhere. And so you've got to go through everything like the wind, through every nook and cranny, of your house, of your personality, everything, and just work it out. Now, at some stage, you'll start to realize what needs to be done, but there is a danger that you hesitate. So you see, I see, there's an evil influence here, but do I really want to deal with it? Maybe I should just, sort it out tomorrow or the day after, or maybe it will go away. And if you procrastinate, you could lose the moment. There's something that needs to be sorted out, and you can't just procrastinate. And I Ching is saying, actually, there's a very good chance you will procrastinate. It's all very well finding out that something is there, that something is causing a problem, but that doesn't mean there's going to be change. You're actually going to have to do something about it. But it does seem that there is movement. The fifth line moves as well. So what happens is the third line moves, and then the fifth line moves. And usually in the I Ching, the fifth line is the most fortunate line in a hexagram. And this indicates that you suddenly hit the moment of change, the moment when you can transform everything for the better. That whatever that bad influence is, it can be swept away. And that sounds good. But then at this stage, things get complicated because this hexagram morphs into hexagram number 4, youthful folly. This hexagram is often the I Ching's way of telling you to go away. It's just telling you you're wasting its time. Don't consult the oracle. That is one approach. It's like, you know what to do. You've been told a million times what to do, but are you actually going to do it? So yes, you're in a position, you can change your life. Maybe it's as dramatic as that. You've got a situation, you know what's holding you up, you know what situations, what people perhaps are holding you up. You now know you have to be rid of this. And you've been probably told this, you know it, but still you don't do it. And so there is this danger of just ignoring people's advice, not doing what you know is right. Um, youthful folly, the number 4, could also suggest that right at the last moment, you just do something stupid. So we have to be really careful at the end of the day. We may be trying to sort everything out. It may be kind of going well, and then right at the end, we just do something stupid. That is a danger. So watch out for that. But it doesn't need to be the case. You know what needs to be done. We all know what needs to be done. And so, we've been told it's like the wind flowing through everything, revealing the evil influences. And I know that kind of sounds dramatic, the evil influences, but that's the I Ching is talking about the evil, something bringing us down, and once we see it, it needs to be removed, and then we can create a better situation for ourselves. And I Ching is saying we can make the change. But there's a danger we just don't see it through. Maybe we're distracted. Maybe we just feel we can't do it. So that's the I Ching. And now I want to go back to the astrology and look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. So here she is. Now, as I said, I don't have her time of birth, so that kind of limits what I say. But okay, there she is. She was born in Georgia. This is a noon chart. So what grabs us about this horoscope? She is, she's quite fiery. She's got the moon in Leo and the Venus in Aries. Now, I say she's got the moon in Leo. Don't know the time of birth. If she was born late in the evening, then her moon would be in Virgo. I sense from her behavior, she's the moon in Leo. Remember, in a female chart, the moon in Leo is very much who you are. The moon is, because it's a female planet, you don't project it onto someone else. You don't project it onto a male partner, husband, whatever. It's yours. The sun, her sun in Gemini, could be projected. I'm not necessarily saying it is projected, but completely. I think she is very much a Gemini. But the moon in Leo, she seems to like attention. She does things which get attention. She militantly espouses particular causes. She's not afraid of controversy. And if you've got moon in Leo, from a psychological point of view, moon in Leo is, in fact, quite a weak place for the moon. The moon has no dignity in the sign of Leo. And that makes sense. Leo is a really warm sign. It's hot. And the moon being a sort of feminine, reflective sign, it's just too much for the moon. And so the moon is just kind of overwhelmed in this situation. So it may be that she may feel she has to make a special effort to get attention, and she's sure succeeding. Certainly in terms of the news coverage. Now, as far as the sun in Gemini is concerned, I've been looking at quite a few people with the sun in Gemini who quite like to be controversial. A couple of days ago I looked at Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, and he's Sun in Gemini. He's born on May the 31st. Now, I don't really want to compare the two people. I mean, Viktor Orban, whatever you think of him, is highly intelligent man, skilled politician. I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene is quite in a league of Viktor Orban. Donald Trump is a Gemini, and we know that Marjorie Taylor Greene is a big fan of Donald Trump, and I will shortly be comparing charts. And so Geminis, at least some Geminis, are really aware of the power of their words to cause complete chaos. And I think this is what is the case with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, she knows that by stating a set of opinions, it's a great way to troll people, isn't it? I mean, you will get a reaction, and there's always that Gemini, that Gemini impulse. I think it may be, and I'm speaking as a Gemini, that part of a problem about being a Gemini is that you ask yourself so many questions that you may sort of almost convince yourself that it's all a waste of time. What is the purpose? What is the purpose of being on this planet? It's this existential crisis. Jean-Paul Sartre, who, with his existentialism and talking about the absurdity of life, he was a Gemini. And so Geminis are in danger of convincing themselves that it's all pointless and there's no point in existing. And why? Well, what's the point? We struggle, and in the end, it doesn't matter. We're dead. I mean, no, I'm not saying that Marjorie Taylor Greene is quite thinking like this at a conscious level, but it may be that when you say something and you get feedback, you say something, it may be extreme, it may be controversial, you get feedback, and it kind of makes you feel alive. And that's important for a Gemini, to feel alive, and to, and if you're not, as a Gemini, fully confident, being able to speak, get feedback, that makes it feel just so much better. And Marjorie Taylor Greene's she's got some interesting fixed stars, two fixed stars that I find interesting. So her sun in Gemini is on it's conjunct the brightest star, I think, in the constellation of the Hyades, the number one, the brightest star in that constellation. And who else has their stuff in sort of early Gemini? The Geminis the May Geminis. There were three soccer players come to mind who had their sons in this part of the zodiac, this part of a Gemini. There was if you're from the UK, you will certainly have heard of him. Is George Best. George Best was a very talented football player who kind of self-destructed. Then there was Paul Gascoigne, had his son in Gemini. I think that incredibly talented football player, but soccer player, but he kind of he didn't do himself any favors through his behavior. And then the French football player, soccer player Eric Cantona. Again, I think he stood, was controversial. He liked to say things that were controversial. So those three had their suns in this same part of the sky as Marjorie Taylor Greene. Also, three Hammer horror actors all had their suns here, which were Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and the other one, Vincent Price. All of them had their suns in early Gemini. So what is it? What is this all about? So I've got this book here, The Fixed Stars and Constellations in Astrology by Vivian Robson, and he says he tells us what happens if you have your sun on the first prima hyadam, what this means for Marjorie Taylor Greene to have sun on Hyades. So let me read this to you. I mean, you'll like this if you're a progressive, or if you're not a fan of her. He says, with the sun, evil disposition, disturbed mind, failure in study, muddled thinking, misfortune, murderer or murdered, death by blows, stabs, shootings, beheadings, or shipwreck. Now, I'm not saying that she's in danger of being shipwrecked, but there is an indication there of her mind is, I'm not saying it's disturbed, but having the sun on Hyades there's a capacity for causing trouble, for not being fully aware of how much damage your words could have. So I think she perhaps needs to be a bit more careful with that sun in Gemini. She also has Mars on Pollux, so there's her Mars in Cancer on Pollux. So Mars is the planet of assertion, of anger. She already has her Mars. That Mars in Cancer is in its fall. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So in Cancer, it doesn't work so well. It can just get annoyed and get angry and do things, out of pique, out of temper, be insulting, and with really bad consequences. Anyway, so Mars is on Pollux. So let me read you about what Robson says about Mars on Pollux. Okay, this is Mars on Pollux, the fixed star Pollux. He says Mars, similar actually from what we heard about Mars on the first Hyades, Sun in Hyades, with Mars, violent, murderer or murdered, high position, but final ruin, violent death by suffocation, drowning or assassination, especially if a moon be there also. But I think the key 4 words are high position, but final ruin. Now, I'm not saying we're going to see final ruin, but Marjorie Taylor Greene has to be careful with that Mars on Pollux. So other things going on in this chart. She has no planets in Earth signs. So Gemini with no planets in Earth signs, that could be a problem. She is shooting her mouth off, causing chaos, I think, causing upset in certain areas. And we're in a very divisive country here. Things are really tense. We possibly don't need extreme language, but she has no planets in Earth. She's not really fully grounded. She doesn't really she doesn't really feel comfortable in the material world. Now, material stuff may be very important to her. But remember, Donald Trump, he doesn't have any planets in Earth signs, certainly no traditional planets in Earth signs. So there is a certain lack of grounding there. I mean, I know that she's had businesses, being involved in businesses, but I just sort of see a certain when you look at her career, it seems very inconsistent. Does she stay in one place for too long? She moves from one thing to another, and she was running a gym at one stage, and then there's questions about her commitment and whatever. I mean, you can read up about it, but if you read it, you kind of get a feel for someone with the sun in Gemini, who doesn't have any Earth in her chart, and this Mars in Cancer. In terms of midpoints, you see she's got Saturn at 4 Cancer, she's got Mars at 22 Cancer. So that means her Mars and her Saturn are about 18 degrees apart. So half of 18 is 9, and 9 plus 4 is 13. So her Mars-Saturn midpoint is at 13 Gemini. Sorry, 13 Cancer. And 13 Cancer is the position of the USA's sun. So her Mars-Saturn midpoint, this is a pair connected with, death, destruction, delay. It's on the US's sun. So I know that she is a great patriot, or she would at least say she was a great patriot, and she's a nationalist and all this kind of stuff. But having her Mars-Saturn midpoint on the USA's sun does actually give her the capacity to cause her country problems. I mean, okay, there's a limit to how far she can go, but she's already trying to sort of impeach the president. Now, I'm not saying that's a good or a bad idea, by the way. I'm completely neutral on whether or not it's good to impeach Biden. But I think that Mars-Saturn midpoint at 13 Cancer on the USA's sun could be problematic. And she's talked about other stuff which is divisive. She's talked about a national divorce and autonomous zones. Now, I understand that to mean that you want to have parts of America, parts of the United States that are kind of really autonomous. So maybe they can't be interfered with so much. America, US is already a federal system, but to have a national divorce, I don't know how far that means, whether you go into separate countries or you have much stronger borders, much stronger differences between spheres of government. But that is a very Gemini thing to do, because Gemini's is about two opposing views. Geminis like to see us and them. Geminis like to always look at the conflict. They're not looking at the union. That's not really what Geminis are about. They want to split things up. And so by talking about national divorce, and by also linking up with her divisive language, that's actually quite a Gemini thing to do, them and us. So whatever ways there are to distinguish between people, to say you are in that group and you are in the other group, that is a Gemini thing. And I think it can be quite a destructive aspect of Gemini. Geminis are not really into sort of complete unions. Geminis, you've always got to have a split. And so I think that's perhaps how her Gemini is working. Now, as far as her horoscope is concerned, probably the major configuration there is this T-square she has. That she's Uranus opposition Venus with Mars on the T. Now, that Uranus opposition Venus may have a lot to do with her relationships, personal stuff that we know nothing about. Mars is on the T. She's got Uranus on the Venus-Mars midpoint. Uranus on the Venus-Mars midpoint is about, it can be about very fast attraction, getting attracted to someone very quickly, falling out with them just as quickly. That can be what Uranus on the Venus-Mars midpoint is concerned. But I'm not sure it's very helpful to talk about this in terms of her personal life because it's not really relevant. We're looking at it in terms of her as a politician. So you could say Uranus opposition Venus. Venus is the planet of a woman. It's opposition a woman. Venus is opposition Uranus. So this is a woman who likes to cause trouble. That's one way of looking at it. Uranus is the rebel. Uranus does not like to follow, the established norms, and so Venus opposition Uranus would be a troublesome woman. And then you put Mars on the T, so there's Mars square Venus square Mars, Mars square Uranus, and so that's where she puts her energy. She puts her energy into upsetting the established order. But Mars is a male planet, so she might want to project that onto a man. So she might want to look for a man who can be her sort of rebellious father figure, perhaps. And who would that be? Well, of course, it would be him, wouldn't it? Might be Donald Trump. So if we just if we compare the two of them, we'll put because we have Trump's birth time. If we put Donald in the middle and we put her on the outside, so there is that Mars on the T. That's her Mars, and you can see that her Mars is conjunct his Venus. So there's a Venus-Mars contact, and that Mars is conjunct his Saturn. So this Mars is on his Venus-Saturn. That's a powerful contact. These two people are sort of brought together maybe politically. I haven't really looked it up, what the relationship is between them and to what extent they are working together politically. But I think that Donald Trump is perhaps the way her is the way her T-square is unlocked. So there's her Uranus opposition Venus, Mars on the T, and that Mars is right on Trump's Venus, and so that really brings them together politically. Also, she has got her North Node at 1929 Sagittarius, and her North Node is on Trump's moon, and her South Node is on Trump's sun. Now, you can see the nodal axis not just as being karma, but just about connections. And so I think the fact that she's got her North Node on Trump's moon is really really significant. This is why Trump probably is really important to her politically. And it was on December the 13th, 2019, she declared her candidature for the 14th electoral district in Georgia. And just before she declared her candidature, there was a full moon at 19 Sagittarius. I think the day before, 2 days before, there was a full moon. Full moon exactly hit her North Node, and so her North Node in Sagittarius. Sagittarius, we don't know her time of birth, so we don't know what house it is, but she has the North Node in Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is supposed to be tactless, supposed to be say it as it is, not care who you offend. So maybe in her case, this is the right thing for her to do. Just remember, when people get into politics, when people get elected to the House of Representatives, Congress, they are becoming part of, they're becoming part of the national destiny. You're always, if Marjorie Taylor Greene had never been born, there'd be another Marjorie Taylor Greene. So it doesn't really matter. So you shouldn't think, you shouldn't make this too personal, because there'd always be another person like her. And so maybe this was her destiny. Maybe in America's destiny, the world's destiny, you need to have people like her, because they have a role to play, even if you can't actually see it. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Obviously, there's a limit to what I can say because I don't have her time of birth. But anyway, I hope you found that of some use, and I will talk to you tomorrow.